There are so many games, just so many games out there. And whether it's competing with an entire genre, a single library, or just other games in its own series, I can certainly understand and appreciate doing things differently. But, contrary to what my mother always told me growing up, different isn't always a good thing. And I've got Sailor Moon on the Game Boy to prove it. Released back in 1992, exclusively in Japan for the original Game Boy, Sailor Moon is technically an action exploration game. You'll understand what I mean when you see how the game breaks up its stages between plot and action. Hey there, my fellow special children, I guess. It's your Captain Spammer D speaking. And if the monitor behind me isn't a dead giveaway, yeah, we're not playing this on a traditional Game Boy. I know, the horror. But you know what I got to say to that? Yo ho, let's-a go. Of course, this matters for a few reasons, like how I can't read Moonspeak. Yet. And thankfully, the advantage of emulating here is that I can play with a fan-translated copy. So, I can read all that vital dialogue, as well as choose which mode I want to play. Yeah, ignoring that, the game starts with Usagi waking up on the day of the first episode of the show, as this game takes place during the first season. Or more like during the first couple episodes. You never even get to meet Sailor Jupiter. Yeah, it's that short. And just like in the show, Usagi is headed to the jewelry store for the big sale. And it's here that we'll notice a big change from the conventional license-based action games of the era. There's no fighting. And yeah, sure, this looks and controls like a typical action side-scroller, but it's not. Right now. Instead, it's kinda more like a pseudo-maze. You traverse the city talking to characters as you try to find out exactly where you're supposed to go, despite the fact that every character keeps telling you, minus the actual directions. And since you can actually go up and down between screens, this is actually a bit of a chore. Especially in that second stage. Though, whether you're traversing the city, school, or gym, you'll probably notice two major things. First, the graphics are pretty decent for the time. At least the environments are. The character proportions are a bit wonky, but I mean, it's Game Boy, so it's forgivable. Plus, they're at least recognizable to fans. And the in-game story does actually look quite good. And the second thing you'll notice is the music. Aside from what is a pretty decent 8-bit rendition of the opening theme, it is just awful. Yeah, this is one of the first games in a long, and I mean long time, that I actually had to mute the game. The music is that annoying. It is just way too loud, too upbeat, and too repetitive. And it just starts to grind away at my mind. But what really kills it is that the music restarts every single time you change screens. And that includes when you talk to other characters. So you'll end up hearing the same opening tune again and again. Ugh. Plus, the song pool is super limited. For your sanity, and mine, aside from the OP from earlier, the song you hear in the background now and the next one are going to be the only ones from this game. The rest will be good Sailor Moon songs. You're welcome. So, getting back on track, as you travel around the city, with your headphones thoroughly blocking out this game's music, you'll quickly begin to wonder, what do I do? Having read the manga, seen 2 animes, the Abridged series...
Serena, these lessons are terrible. Every time your show airs, a young, impressionable teenager dies. That's the point. Keep watching.
And having experienced the first battle of the series multiple times in other games, translated or not, I know what's going on. But I reach the jewelry store where the big bad is, and nothing happens. Well, I figure that the battle actually takes place at night in the show, so maybe I need to go back home first and rest? Well, that's half right. Every stage, except the final one, works like this. First, you need to wander around the stage and just talk to all the key characters. Once you have, Luna will spawn somewhere. Find her, and you'll finally be able to transform and really get into the action. Honestly though, this break from the classic, just fighting the entire time, that was typical of these games, is interesting. It just doesn't work. These areas are way more confusing to navigate than they have any right to be, which is just extra tedious with the music just blasting away at my brain cells. And there just isn't enough here to really warrant said exploration. At least nothing that couldn't have been conveyed in a few story stills at the start of the level. Plus, it's not like you can die or even fail these segments, so it's pretty boring, especially for how long it could take if you don't already know where to go. And doubly so if you end up having to redo it, if you end up dying in the action segments. So let's talk about those. As soon as you transform into Sailor Moon, you are essentially transported to a battle stage that has nothing to do with the stage you were just in. But it certainly does look like a traditional side-scroller on the Game Boy now, doesn't it? Plays like one too. It actually plays a lot like Game Boy games we've covered in the past, like TMNT and Power Rangers, where basically you just travel from the left side of the screen to the right, smacking or dodging everything in your way with one-hit attacks, ending in a boss fight with some pretty simple patterns, which you'd think would be pretty tough to mess up. But you'd be wrong. Sailor Moon, the only playable character by the way, only has access to 3 moves: jump, kick, and cry.
I wanna go home!
Yeah, seriously. And while not less than any of the other games I've mentioned, they are certainly less dependable. The kick sucks. It just sucks, plain and simple. Sometimes I hit the enemies first, and other times they hit me. The hitbox feels like a complete crapshoot. Also, when you jump, you have momentum, except as soon as you kick. Then it all just goes away and you fall flat. Makes the game feel really stiff. But the real deal breaker here is that surprisingly frequently, the controls just stop responding entirely. And I'm not talking about that, ah damn it, I totally pressed jump kind of moment that anyone who's played a platformer has experienced before. No, this happens multiple times, like I'm just pressing the attack or jump with just no response at all, period. It has led to so many cheap and unnecessary hits. It's infuriating. And for the record, it's not the controller. I'm using a USB NES controller, about as close to the original Game Boy as you can get. It's also not the ROM or the emulator, as I tried games that I have physical copies of just to compare. It's the game. Ah, right, I'm sure you're pretty interested in the crying too. So yeah, at first, I thought it was just a clever duck mechanic, you know, some charming visuals. Turns out, it's way more than that. At the start of the final stage, you're trapped in a room, where there's nowhere to go or anything to interact with. That hits a little close to home. So I just gave up, sat down and cried. And then I decided to go look at a wiki. So it turns out that the wails of Usagi's crying voice literally destroys stone. And that's how you find the power-ups. I really wish that they had this stage at the beginning of the game instead of the end. Would have saved me so much gamer rage. And yeah, I know what you're thinking, it probably was in the instructions, but it's not like I could have read them anyway. Or would have read them anyway, I mean, reading, right? The power-ups let Usagi stop time, become invincible, and of course use her Moon Tiara magic, aka a projectile. And these power-ups definitely make the game much more tolerable. Mostly because 2 out of 3 of them just let you skip all the action. Take that however you will. But for me, this one is a no-go. Putting it bluntly, Sailor Moon on the Game Boy is a pretty weak experience. And I'm not just talking about by today's standards, which I mean, yeah, it still is. But no, I'm talking by OG Game Boy standards as well. While most of the visuals are passable to good, the gameplay itself just doesn't hold up. The main combat feels cheap and buggy to the point where I'm just praying for a power-up so I can skip it. Especially on the boys difficulty, where the constant locking up just amplifies the frustration. And of course, the music is nearly intolerable. And while I can truly appreciate how they try to incorporate the show's non-action side of things into the gameplay, the fact is that it just slows everything down even further. It was a neat attempt, but the fact is that I simply can't recommend Sailor Moon on the Game Boy to anyone. Not even Sailor Moon fans. Luckily though, the series has plenty of other games to choose from, so go check out one of them instead.